Another episode, the Lightdrop podcast. Two friends talking creative and beyond. My name is Jamil.
And my name is Jeff.
All right, Jeff. So I want to start this one off with a question for you. Just tell me something that excites you, man. Tell me what you've been thinking about. Something to work on or to read about. Just I want to feel it. I want to feel that energy. Tell me about something that's been exciting you lately.
Yeah, so something that's been exciting me lately has been anime. Anime has
Oh,
been I've been pulling a lot of inspiration from some of these like more tech heavy animes, looking at the
what do you mean
textures of
tech heavy?
tech heavy, like let's say like Ghost in the Shell,
Okay.
um, things like that. I've been watching that new Pluto one also, which is about like robots trying
I've,
to become human, kind of like they're
is
trying to
that
figure out their emotions.
what is that on? Cause
Netflix.
yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Okay, I might check that out. Cause I went through a big anime kick, but it's been years I think since I really kind of watched anime. But I love anime. I'm kind of like on the outside fringe. Like I wouldn't call myself a big anime person,
Yeah.
but I do love it. I love anime. I mean, right behind me I have Hunter
Posters.
Hunter. Yeah.
Yeah. No, man. And I'm the same way. Like, I'm not like people. If you start name dropping characters, voices, or actors, whoever voice actors, I won't know who they are. I won't know specific, episodes or I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, some
But I
people
like,
go, wow.
yeah, some people know the details, right? But I think just on the surface level, every time I watch an anime that gets me excited, I'm just like, I want to make that, even though obviously I can't, I'm not an animator, but seeing something that's so cool that you're like, I want to reproduce that somehow, some way is what like gets me excited about those animes. Cause I'm like, some of them are just, man,
Yeah, I know what you
they go
mean.
hard.
I honestly feel like that's something that a lot of people get excited about with anime, even if they don't realize it. It's that just the nature of the design or the aesthetic, how it varies per different anime. It's almost like I think an analogy I would use that I know a lot of people would resonate with is some of the early Fast and Furious movies that just made me want to race illegally. Like when I came home from the theater after seeing the first Fast and Furious movie, I mean, I was only like 10 or 11, but I needed like all the racing video games, all the just like steering wheel. Like I just wanted to like do that, and it got me so excited to just kind of like your imagination just runs with like all these different places, like just from the idea of this world that you like experience. I feel like that's one of the big things that gets people excited about anime is it's just the possibilities are endless. It's always a different universe that you're in, and then you combine that with this unique aesthetic that it has. It just kind of takes you through all these different ideas of your own of how it could go and how something else could look. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And they're really pushing, man. Like, there's some that they've built worlds so well, like, Akira is a big one. And you know, Kiki's Delivery Service, all those from Studio Ghibli, just
mm,
amazing, man. Like they really give uh, anime the respect that it deserves. Now it's maybe there's a couple that are being pushed out quickly, but if you really look at those older ones, even some of the newer ones, the way that they're building the worlds, it's so exciting to see.
yeah.
Motivating.
There's some mediums that you can't rush, and if you do, you notice. Like stop motion is another one. where you don't have a good stop motion full film come out often, but when it does, like, you know that it's been in development for some time, and there's no shortcuts to that can get taken for mediums like that. Yeah, anime is one of those. I think another one for me is writing. I've gotten big into to I've always enjoyed writing like little short stories even when I was in like elementary school, but I never finished them. I would always start them, and like I would just start a million of them, and and I would say maybe in the last 5 6 years or so, I just have been enjoying writing like fiction and coming up with stories and learning how to craft worlds and everything. So yeah,
Yeah,
animes and all the storylines there are definitely just like a whole feeding ground for inspiration.
yeah. And I thinking about it, even like you mentioned, writing. I think it's such a valuable skill that's like for an artist to have. It's always something that I think that I want to keep working on. Definitely, even I want to be good at it. I don't want to just know how to write a little bit of copy because I think being able to understand a story and being able to layer it correctly and communicate it with words, it's super. I mean, it's straightforward, but it's a different way of thinking about creativity that I want to definitely pursue because I think it's basically like drawing. I mean, you're drawing on on paper and you're coming up with ideas, and um, it's like every time I've improved my writing just a little bit, it's always made me a slightly better artist and designer. So I definitely want to also I want to practice
Yeah,
some better writing.
yeah. Creative writing is, I mean, I think it could be one of the most daunting mediums to like undertake, if not the most, right? Like, I'm sure writers would probably agree with this, um, in that you're obviously starting from nothing with everything you create, whether you're painting something or starting a new design on the computer or even, pen to paper. But with creative writing, writing fiction, it's like world building and character development, and it's definitely one of the most daunting places to start from zero, like having that void of a blank page in front of you to then begin to build a world with characters that have history and emotions and stories to tell and things that happen to them, and figuring out how they're going to navigate that, and then getting to that point where it's it's telling itself through you. You just become a medium, to fill out that story after a
Yeah,
certain point. I think that that's definitely one of the most daunting voids to be in at the beginning of a project. But if you can do that and have the experience of following through with that and actually creating a world, even if you don't share it with anybody, even if you just kind of do it for yourself and it's something that you would enjoy reading or talking about or 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 whatever, that translates, I think, so well to everything else, because it's like, okay, I can do this. I can start from scratch with the design. They gave me this idea. They want me to flesh out, no problem. Whatever you're doing, it's yeah, I think that writing is is like a tool in your tool belt as a designer or a creative.
yeah. It's and the thing is like you can't hide when you're writing with graphic design or any other visual effects. You can People don't notice some of the nuances unless you're like obviously the company that's paying you to do it. But with writing, it's like it's very straightforward. You can't hide behind flashy graphics, so you have to be very clear and concise about what you're saying. So it's an
Yeah,
absolutely amazing skill.
yeah, that's true. I think when it comes to graphic design and especially for clients or advertising or anime, there's there's this subjectivity to it. Everybody's got their preferences as to what looks good, what doesn't look so good, or what will work or what won't work.
Yeah,
And those are very tangible, right? I may like more 2D style while someone else may prefer a more 3D graphic, photorealistic kind of vibe, right? But with writing, we never really know actually what it is that about good writing that we like. I mean, we can sit down and dissect it for sure, but as you're reading it, you're not necessarily conscious of the way that the words flow together that's making it so easy for you to read, or
yeah,
the words jumping off the page, like that expression. A good writer makes it seem so easy and so simple that you're
yeah,
just like, this is just the book, this is just a really good story. You don't
yeah,
think about actually the technical aspect of telling that story that went into making you feel that way.
yeah.
So yeah.
Super important.
Hmm.
So besides writing, what else has gotten you inspired recently and creative, motivated, things
Yeah,
like
I
that?
mean, like I said, I've been doing some creative writing for past several years now. I've been working on this book off and on for, yeah, probably like the last 5 years. This
Wow.
fiction novel that
Yeah.
I've had in my head, just um it comes and goes. I've started it quite a bit. I fleshed it out, but one of the things that I learned years ago was that there's time to take in and there's time to put out, you
Yeah.
know? And at first I felt like I was wasting time doing nothing by not writing my book. But
Hmm.
over time I've come to learn that every time I go back to it, I have this new perspective that's helping me flesh it out even further. And I realized that I never stopped writing it, in experiencing things I've experienced in life and relationships and ups and downs. That's writing my book.
Hmm.
That's kind of the way I've been seeing it anyways.
Yeah. No,
So
I get that.
yeah, so
Yeah.
there's been this very subtle like undertone in my own mind for the past 5 years of this book that I'm writing, even though I may not have actively been writing it the entire time. It's always there. I'm always just having these ideas of like how I can add to it or what this character may do based on the things that I'm experiencing and living out. And on top of that, this book, and I'm being vague on purpose. I'm not going into the details of the book because it's
Yeah.
going to come
No.
out. It's going to come out
Yeah.
eventually. I'm gonna publish it and everything. But there's also a music aspect to it. As you know, I write music, and I've been doing that for years. So one of the characters in the book is a musician, and so in me writing his story and some of the things that he creates, I'm I'm finding that I need to do that myself too,
Mm.
you know. So
Yeah.
I've had this, like I said, very very subtle undertone kind of riding beneath everything that I've been living and experiencing over the past several years, that I've been just jotting notes down for my book. So that's what's been exciting for me
Hmm.
lately, is even when tough things happen or unexpected things happen, I just remember the book that I'm writing and how beneficial it will be in me writing that,
Hmm.
you know.
So yeah, just using your experiences. Gotcha. Yeah, I've been that has me thinking about. I've been thinking about like 3D a lot
Mm.
because when I was at in school, I like that's what excited me the most about industrial design was getting to do like some CAD modeling. So I've been like thinking about how am I going to get back into it without necessarily one like paying for the programs because I want to get back into like hard body modeling. I think that's what it's called. Surface or yeah,
Oh, hard surface modeling.
hard surface modeling. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, but just approaching it differently now that I haven't. I'm not being forced to like make things. Not forced, but obviously for a class, you need to make stuff, and you don't have a choice because you got to pass the class. But now I have so much more freedom. I can approach it differently and really enjoy a lot of it because it's not there's not this pressure of having to deliver on it. So I want to get back into it because I think it's when I first started learning about graphic design, 3D was something that I was learning along with it. So like Cinema 4D was like, and I probably would have gotten into Blender if I'd known about it when I first started school. But it was just always something that I was always like in the back of my mind. If I can connect um, anime to what I'm doing, I'm gonna do it. And that was what happened. It was like 3D, like game design, anime kind of tech future ish. I need to do something with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, now I want to get back into it for sure. I think
It's
3D design
weird
is
'cause it's like you would think that it's simple to just work on something like that on the side, but when we get up and running with our careers and day-to-day life and leaving school, if you went to school, you build up this momentum of quote unquote adult life, right? Responsibilities and so on and so forth. And if you're not careful, you can trick yourself into thinking that these things are, I don't have the time because I have more important things to take care of.
right.
But it's the most important thing to take care of, right? Like,
Yeah,
if you're someone who identifies as an artist, you would call yourself an artist, like we mentioned a bunch of times before. Like, everyone is a creative, everyone's creating something for themselves or for others. But if you're actually someone who calls themselves a creative, then you got to create. You got to look for opportunities to make things, learn new things. And oftentimes they're not far. If you really just kind of sat down and said, what do I want to do? Like, what I want to make, answer would probably come pretty quickly to you. And it's probably something very simple. I want to paint something. I want to embroider something. I want
yeah,
to, you know, write
model
something.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, and like you said, 3D modeling. And you know what I think we've kind of gotten tainted with in society is just the need to feel like you need to monetize it in some way, shape, or form.
yeah,
And not only do I think that keeps people from starting to learn something new or to build something new, but if they do actually start that process, then eventually in a lot of cases I think it starts to creep into their creative process, and it starts to get influenced by this idea that I need to monetize it in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. And I think the reason for that is because, you know, money is energy. And so you're putting all this energy into something and you feel like you need to get some of it back, you know,
Yeah.
by way of currency, money. But I think that that's kind of the true challenge of an artist is to really be unafraid to just unselfishly give that energy into your project and subsequently into the world, you know, without expecting anything in return. That's that's what can be scary, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you don't know if obviously you'll get the reciprocated energy back. I think
Yeah.
about that with when you're starting out and no one has validated any of your ideas. You're kind of worried about, maybe you're not even sure if this is the thing that you should be doing. I think definitely introducing money so soon will keep you from kind of gaining that confidence in yourself that I can at least do this, and money will restrict you early on. So it doesn't benefit you to put that restriction on yourself so much so early in your career. So I think
It's
just doing it, just just do it. Literally, just do the thing. And
Nike.
I think, and it's funny because I feel like once you get into that flow state, when you're working, eventually at some point in your career, when you're making this money, you'll have already, instead of thinking about it as early on, like I'm just practicing, and maybe somebody will pay me and I need to get paid. You're kind of practicing, um, creating itself, and that is valuable in itself. So it doesn't matter if you're making money; you're still just practicing creating, and that's the most important thing, I think.
Well, think about it, right? When you ask why, it's like, why am I creating this? And you try to answer that question at its purest form, it's it's going to come down to some kind of emotion
Yeah.
that you want to feel, you know? Like you wouldn't do it, you don't want to create, you're not creating something to feel stressed. That's not why you do it. You don't create something to feel empty and void of. That's not why you're creating something. You're creating something to feel joy, to feel satisfaction, and appreciation for yourself, and for the medium that you're using and the people that you're creating it for. And when you boil it down just to the emotion of the why, then you can start to realize that that emotion can be found in many other ways, often immediately, right? Does that make sense? It's almost like creating is a long journey, and I'm creating this thing because I want to feel satisfaction, and I'm afraid that I'm not going to feel that satisfaction until I've finished creating it. But
Hmm.
if you can get into that place of satisfaction as you're creating it, the emotion that you're trying to feel upon its completion, then you're just flooding that into your work as you're working on it, and it's nothing but that emotion that's going into your work, and it's what ends up happening is it turns into this just revealing of that emotion time and time again as you're working on it, and that kind of leads into to the the quote, however you want to quote it, the journey. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Yeah.
That's kind of how you can think about it.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, thinking about like early. presentations, remember the critiques. Obviously, everyone has them in school. When you're
Mhm.
critiquing something, or even when you're presenting something, you know what's got you excited. Like you can tell when someone knows the details of their piece, or whatever it is that they've made. That emotion that you're just talking about, that is when it comes to light. And it is uh it's inspiring to other people when they see it. I mean, even whatever it is that you're talking about, when you talk about those details in that exciting way, that is what leads to other things, because people can see, like, you've put a lot of emotion into this, you've thought about it, and now we're going to translate that into something else, because now you've gotten other people inspired, which is like the goal. You've transferred that emotion, your own excitement.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If you focus on that being the motivator to drive your work, the emotion, then that'll come forth when it's actually delivered to someone. But if you put money on it, like gratification, this expectation of having a return, then there's you're at risk of creating something void of of emotion
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
actually caring. And yeah.
Yeah. And you end up having more stale work. I feel like I've been in those moments before in my life where I was making things just because I needed to get paid, but I wasn't excited about them at all. And I don't remember any of the things I made then. Uh,
Yeah,
I remember the things that I cared about for sure, because, you spend a lot of time thinking about things that no one cares about. And it's important to be able to monitor whether or not you're creating with the same vigor and energy as you once did, or you want to, or something is you've fallen off, or something is off. And that's when you have to go back and you have to address, like, what's the issue? Why aren't I how come I'm not excited about making things anymore? You
you
know?
got to constantly be checking in with yourself as
Yeah.
a creator, as a creative. Yeah.
It's super important, man.
100%. I think, yeah, man, that's that's something that keeps people from getting started, I think, so much. And look, we live in the society that we live in, right? So there's got to be some compromise. If
Yeah.
you can talk to yourself about that compromise to because we all have bills to take care of. And
Yeah.
we
That
can't
check.
just stay home and and create art to our heart's content, and just kind of expect to be able to pay for gas and everything,
Yeah.
right? But if you think about it that way, it becomes a little bit easier to know that, like, I'm going to make this compromise here, but I'm still going to prioritize my my energy and my emotions. And going back to what you said about critiques, once you finally reveal that work to others, that's when it starts to turn into growth.
Yeah.
Because if growth is something that you want, you can't have that in isolation anyways. You have to reveal it to others to get that different perspective, and that differing opinions and stuff, to be able to absorb that about others, to
Yeah.
then grow your perspective and your ideas and techniques and all of that.
Yeah. And I read something a little bit, I think it was about a designer, a graphic designer or something, or maybe an artist. They were just saying how they, no matter what they did, or no matter what any artist does, you can't control how people perceive your work. So, and I think that translates with everything beyond, just graphic design specifically. I think it translates to other work, and it comes back to being able to see that work outside of your own ego, and putting it in front of people is probably the best way to get that ego like relinquished, so that you can actually focus on what's actually there. Because I think there's a different way of it. Maybe you do have this emotion that's connected to this work, but it's so deep that you're not willing to allow anybody else to see it. And along the process, you built this like ego to protect yourself from showing it to anyone.
And that's just a
Get it out.
reflection of what you're going through, if that's the case
Yeah,
too, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think I'm also still kind of the same way. I'm like worried about putting my work out there. Um, I'm worried about people seeing it, even though I've made work, I've gotten stuff out. I think there's definitely this big ego that is constantly like attached to my back. You know what I'm saying? Like that I don't want to show any of my work to yet, because I feel like it's not it's not up to my own standards. But I know that sharing it will help somebody else. It'll help me with my ego problem. But I think definitely like guarding your work too much, putting too much emotion to it, can be detrimental to your growth.
You know what I think could it just gave me a thought as to what I think could not be the remedy, but a perspective to think about where that may come from, right? That ego in
Mm,
you. You think about my work, like when you say that to yourself, this is my work that I'm afraid or am apprehensive to show to others or am defensive of when people respond to. But what is your work that's, it's you, and then you get into, okay, well, who am I? I'm just
mm,
a I'm just a reflection of my environment, right? My all the experiences that I've lived, the emotions that I've experienced and have been influenced onto me by my friends, my family, their families, and you're just this culmination of experiences and influences from others. So when you kind of go back in time to really dissect who you are and who it is that's creating this, in a way it's a collaborative thing. In a way it's all of those people's work too.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
so if you can start to get into that space of recognizing that we're all creating, right? And it's only just in this particular instance, for this particular project, I'm just the one that it's coming through. I'm just the vessel that is putting the pen to the paper or the paintbrush to the canvas, but it's actually a collective experience, emotion, that's this cooperative thing
Hmm.
that I'm the outlet for right now. So if you
Yeah.
could kind of get there, then ego starts to disappear and you start to feel way more willing to share because you're not so attached to it as just yours, and the things that are going on in your mind, and vulnerability starts to dissipate a bit, or at least it can,
Yeah.
because everybody's going through something, and everybody has the emotions that you have that went into the work that you did. They just may not have the skills to to show it the way you did, but
Yeah.
you're still showcasing things that they're experiencing. And yeah, that was interesting how you mentioned that.
Yeah. And I think about it, it sounds like this is this is a collective. piece that we've all made, obviously, because no one, even if you're just sitting in your room somewhere working on Photoshop, somebody had to make your computer, your house. It's all a collaborative project, basically. And yeah, just like what you said, putting it out there and putting your work out there shows that, you are part of a bigger system. I mean, a bigger creative outlet, especially with like professional work. I think showing that to other people and explaining how you made it, and um, talking about the process. I think when you do that, you can see that, this wasn't just me. And I think that's the big difference between um, starting off and you're young in your career, you're making stuff, but as you start to pursue like bigger and bigger projects, or you're working on bigger and bigger projects, you understand that you can't make things in a vacuum on your own. It doesn't work like that. No one's ever. I mean, there's probably people out there like Beeple who've been
Like
making
who?
stuff. Beeple, you know that
What is
the
that?
Beeple. I think that's his name. You've heard about
Oh,
him. He's the
heard
guy
of
who was making like NFTs kind of on Instagram, and he was posting
it.
uh, every single day for. He's been doing it for like 10 years, man,
Mm.
and no one
I've probably
recognized
seen
him.
I've probably
Yeah,
seen
no, you because he sold like his NFT project because he had done like thousands of them at this point, but no one had recognized him. And then he NFTs start becoming a thing, and then people are like, "Oh, you should put your stuff in NFTs." So he puts like all of them, and he makes like 1 million. But obviously, the whole time he was working, it wasn't. He was just making stuff, and no one, people were just looking at it. He was just
Yeah.
putting it out there, and then to see that translated into something else. But even with that, I think it's an amazing thing when an artist shares, because you get other people excited, people who aren't even creatives. They get to see your work, and they kind of join your 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 creative process. So maybe they might start inputting stuff, and that's what happened with people. People would be commenting on the thing on Instagram, maybe giving them ideas. So it became this collaborative project, which became a community, which became $1 million. So
Yeah, yeah,
and that's what happens, right?
that energy is gonna come back around.
Yeah,
If you focus on the emotion, and eventually it'll resonate with people who put input into it, and they'll start to give you back that energy.
yeah,
And in our society, eventually that's going to manifest as money, right? It has to
yeah,
manifest as money in some way when people are giving their energy back to you, and when you can kind of release yourself of having to put that in, of expecting that back immediately. It could kind of free you up to really create something that people will resonate with and want to compensate you for, with their energy and their emotion. And and what and and what you're saying about this collective project, right? Of all of us, like you said, someone made the computer or the paper, and everything, in some way, shape, or form, is a collaborative effort. Even if you would call it your idea, and your paintbrush and your skills, and I think we could see that most consistently and prominently in things like Marvel and video games. I think of video games like Destiny. Are you familiar with Destiny by
oh
Bungie?
yeah,
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 everybody knows Destiny. And animes,
yeah,
things that have this lore to them and this huge fan base. eventually what always happens, right, is the fans start to give that energy back and give their input back and their expectations back, and
Mhm.
it puts this pressure on the employees at Bungie, the game developers at Bungie, the writers at Bungie, for example, for Destiny, or someone who's writing for Marvel, these new movies, because there are these expectations already. They know that it's not, they know that they can't attach their ego to the work that they're creating, because it's going into this pile, this mosh pit of expectant, excited fans who just want to continue to feel something.
Yeah,
So
a lot of pressure.
for those artists, it's it's not an option to create something without an ego, and to just really accept that I'm
Mm.
just the vessel that this greater story is being told through, to just
Mhm.
deliver to these wonderful, respectful fans.
They'd be
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Be roasting
roasted,
you, telling you about how
mad.
mad, and how, like, what were you doing for the past year that you came out with this trash kind of thing, and and then you see on Reddit, and employees are just like, Jesus, these fans are brutal, and but it just goes back to that energy. It's this energetic exchange that our creativity and our creative ventures are.
Yeah. And sometimes, like you said, it's received negatively and comes back to us being able to protect it. I mean, I'm pretty sure those game studios, game dev studios, it's it can be incredibly difficult to be creating at a high level when you're being, like shot down by fans that, or you didn't get the feedback you thought you would. So I think
Mhm.
it's even more important than when you're working in like super high production place, like the way that you were working in cinema, movies, everything like that. It's it's more important than ever because you the things that you create are going to be put out, and a lot more people are going to see it, and they're going to be able to critique it. So being able to separate yourself from that and reduce your ego a bit allows you to create even more because you realize that it wasn't just me who made this thing. It was a bunch of us. We had this idea. It wasn't just I didn't mess up this whole project by myself. It was a collaborative project, and some things didn't go right. But yeah, I think just coming back to that, like removing your ego from the project constantly. When it's out, it's out. You do the best that you can, and you come back and you try and go even harder. So
Yeah, but I mean, even if it's received negatively, you can still kind of, and I'd be curious to speak, because I've worked in big productions like this before, but it was never on something um that's had this history of episodes and episodes, and movie after movie. It was one-off projects that I worked on. So, and of course, I was just, you know putting my skills to use to bring out this greater vision. But when I think of, like, what we were talking about specifically, with, we're sticking with Bungie, and they're making Destiny, and if they were to come out with an expansion or a story or something that wasn't well received, I'd be curious to speak with an employee, a game dev at those studios, to who's experienced that, over the course of their career, like, many times, and someone who's very understanding that it's just this natural thing, right?
mm,
There's never gonna not be some group of, even if you fragment the fans, some group of people who are displeased and are directing, that energy at you, saying that things should have been done this way. Why weren't they done this way? And you definitely get to a point, I'm sure, as a professional who's, even if you're not conscious of it, you're completely remove that ego. You're just enjoying being a part of it, being a part of this community,
Mm,
this story that's developed, the story within the story that's developed. And I'm sure it could just, even with that, could be fun,
yeah,
to to people with the right mindset. Is just like, this is just creating and getting this feedback in this way, seeing people's passion. And I'm human, so of course I might get frustrated and want to retaliate back with my own words, but all of it is just this creative, collaborative, energetic exchange that's manifesting as video games and movies and stories and anime. And yeah.
yeah. And speaking of that, I think to close off, I feel like we've talked about a lot of interesting things, but I think when it comes back to it, it's that, like you said, that creative mindset. What are you doing inside? What's going on inside your head while you're making things, when you're putting them out there? How other people are receiving them? What are those conversations that you're having with yourself? Because those conversations tend to get louder the more you're experiencing something. If you have that echo that is constantly negative, and then now you're dealing with the ego, you're obviously tired because the production schedule is like 1 week. Those things start to pile up. So having a creative mindset as you grow in your career is super important. You got any thoughts on that? Any closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this on the last couple episodes, is just that that energy output as a creative professional that you have to be very mindful of, and to not get to the point that you've depleted yourself, because it's not just about physical energy to be able to get up in the morning and go to the gym after work, and
Hmm.
play with your kids also, and have time to handle things on the weekend. It's this energetic exchange, like we've been talking about for the past however 40 minutes, that
Yeah.
that is the art that we're creating, whether we're contracted to do it by someone else who's saying, hey bruh, here's $4,000, you do
Yeah.
this for me, because I don't want to do it myself, or I don't know how to do it. So I'm having you do it,
Hmm.
and I'm expecting your energy to do it. And you can't just get into creative professions just kind of uh sloppy and not conscious of that, you know
Yeah.
not mindful, I guess that's a better word. You
Yeah. Yeah.
can't not be mindful that that's what's going on, because if you aren't, then you'll be depleted. You'll allow that to deplete you, and you need to make sure that you're being selective with your energy, that you're putting in energy for yourself, that you're expecting it back in ways that may not necessarily be tangible immediately, right? But to to understand that we're putting in way more than just time. We're putting in
Yeah.
emotion, we're putting in experiences, we're putting in, our friends' experiences, our parents' experiences, all, what we hear on the news is all coming through us
Well,
and out of
exactly.
us. And you gotta be you gotta be you gotta be you gotta be selfish almost
Yeah.
in taking care of yourself and your energy, and that's one of the big things that I've learned over the past several years as a
Yeah.
creative, you know, as a
Yeah.
creative professional.
Absolutely. But yeah, that's the pod.